Alright, welcome to Modern Mondays here at Guardian Games in Portland, Oregon. I'm Travis Cooper, hanging out in the booth with
Tim Chan.
and we're Portland Paper here, hosting some live paper Magic the Gathering. And it looks like we have round one getting ready to start here. Had a couple stragglers, starting a little bit late. But we have what looks to be Hardened Scales. Kernan, is that how you pronounce that, Tim?
I believe so.
Kernan?
Yeah.
Matched up against Manfred Mueller on Humans. Manfred is a new parent, and this is his regular here, and it's his first night back in a while.
Well, congrats to him. Probably needs all the sleep.
Yeah, procreation is the thing that happens, I guess. This matchup, two pretty popular modern decks. Do you think there's a favorite to win, or is it about even? What's your take on the matchup, Tim?
I just think it comes down to, at least in my opinion, depends if Kiernan has the hardened scales or not, because he can just race a lot faster than Manfred can, especially with Walking Ballista. He can start shooting down Manfred's creatures, but if he doesn't really have the hardened scales, he's going to have a pretty slow start, because like we've seen with humans, they can have a very explosive start, and especially with no removal, uncontested, with multiple thousands lieutenant. So I think it all is dependent on Kiernan's hand.
I think Hardened Scales is going to make a big difference, and then Manfred being able to have some Mantis Riders, being able to fly over Hardened Scales decks is pretty important, because they can just create a lot of chump blockers very easily with cards like, you have all your proliferate cards, Throne of Geth, etc., and things like Hangerback Walker. But yeah, if Kieran's able to get a big walker and then create some Thopters, that could be an issue, but I feel like it's going to be flying, versus some Walking Ballista shenanigans.
Yep.
Alright. Yeah, gives a thumbs up.
Alright, Humans is on the play and has a 1-drop, which these 1-drops for both decks are very important, because you really have to get on the upper footing here. There's not a lot of playing from behind, and we have a Inkmoth and a Arcbound Worker for Kiernan.
Well, we don't have the hardened scales. If Manfred drops that Man Stride right now, I think Kiernan's in big trouble, because I expect he's probably going to have either turn 2 Arcbound Ravager or a turn 2
Walking Ballista?
Yeah.
Hangerback Walker, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like we get a Bugler. Manfred's on that build of the list. It seems like that is kind of the flex slot that goes in and out of being a popular choice or not. But Manfred is on the Buglers and grabs an image, so kind of a value chain here. And that Inkmoth can be pretty scary on Kiernan's side, just with the ability to move counters around. If you get an Arcbound Ravager, can kind of kill out of nowhere.
I'm wondering if Kiernan is just missing the green source to cast Hardened Scales.
Okay.
That could be another possibility. Because I did see a green spell in Kiernan. It could also be Ancient Stirrings.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, looks like we got a new sub at the beginning of the stream, so thanks a lot for doing that. That really helps us out here. Christachi, is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, Christachi. Is that... We gotta find Herbie later.
Huh? Alright, and we are getting that value chain of image copying the Bugler here. Manfred may be digging for a Mantis Rider.
You can't find a... Oh. It's 2 power less, right?
Yeah, you can't find a Mantis Rider,
Yeah.
but maybe he's really digging for it.
I mean, he's taking a break, so we gotta give him a break.
Okay, so what is the best? What do you think the best creature to get off Bugler in the matchup is?
Well, the current board state, I just get 1,010. You just gotta start jamming in right now, because Kiernan doesn't really have much going on. He really doesn't. He just has a bunch of 1/1s, no Arcbound Ravager. I don't know what he's gonna do right here.
Rising Canopy?
Yeah, it can't even really animate the Inkmoth to move some counters on it if one chump blocks.
Because Kiernan also, he doesn't have any mana acceleration, so we don't see Mox support. Oh, okay.
It's a lot of Hierarchs, man, you just played.
Maybe that's why we're seeing so many Militia Buglers.
At this point, I might be incentivized just to do a chump block here, because you're going to move the counter, and you're going to move those around later.
No blocks.
Yep, but Kiernan decides not to block and goes down to 15.
Untap, upkeep, draw.
Darksteel Citadel here. So being on 3 mana is pretty key with having Inkmoth so that you're
Yeah.
able to play a 2-drop and animate it, but we just get a passing of the turn here.
So Kiernan does have the hardness scale in hand.
Ah.
He is missing that green source.
That's a lot of Noble Hierarchs.
I think that was another Horizon Canopy that Manfred drew. He does have a Reflector Mage, so if Inkmoth does block, he can at least bounce that land. Well, it's not like it's going to do too much,
Gonna
but
crack the Horizon Canopy. Okay. Card.
Alright, Manfred cracking the canopy. It's kind of free here with all those Hierarchs.
so Manfred has 2 Meddling Mages in hand. I think he just drew the second one off the Horizon Canopy.
Well, I might be incentivized to play a Meddling Mage on Walking Ballista, and then you could play a second one on something like Arcbound Ravager, and
Yeah,
you prevent...
you lock out a lot.
Yep.
Play Meddling Mage. Okay. So once it's in play, whatever I name can't be cast.
Are you
I'm gonna
a
name
Chris
this one.
Bakula fan?
Okay.
Sorry?
Are you a Chris Bakula fan?
I never really followed the history back, you know, because I've only been playing since Theros.
Okay.
So I don't really know him as well or his history. I mean, he's obviously has a good record, but I can't speak for myself.
I just follow his Twitter because he's a middle-aged man that posts a lot about metal bands, which is pretty fun.
Before blocks.
All right, we get a Bugler coming in for 5. Oh, wow.
I'll block with an Arcbound Ravager.
Yeah.
Okay. So we animate Inkmoth, blocking with the Worker. I feel like we're going to see this counter moved over to the Inkmoth.
Yeah, just with one. Okay. Damage the styes your slits. Yep.
I don't think we heard what Manfred said with the Meddling Mage. If I was Manfred, I would have attacked first probably, just in case, because then you could Reflector Mage and not have the extra count on Inkmoth, actually.
Well, that's kind of what you want to do, right? Is you want Kiernan to move the counter onto Inkmoth, then bouncing
Yep.
Reflector Mage Inkmoth, so kind of essentially wasting the counter.
Mm-hmm. So I think we're seeing the second Meddling Mage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Calling Arcbound Ravager.
Ravager is named off the second mage.
I don't
So
even know if these are the right calls, but they are called. And I'll take one to play Neath Vial. Okay. And pass the turn. I have 18 to 15.
It looks like Manny's left with 1 card in hand here. But those Hierarchs make almost any creature into quite a formidable threat.
yeah, I think Kieran's plan at the moment is just Steel Overseer. Okay, that's not too bad. I think he's going to keep constantly chump blocking, try to get the Inkmoth into a 2-turn clock. But again, Manfred's got that Reflector Mage, so
Right.
I expect he's going to chump block, and hopefully if Manfred keeps 3 mana up, he's going to Reflector Mage that Inkmoth back up to his hand. Or we could just see a chump Reflector Mage also on the Steel Overseer.
Both pretty good targets. I imagine it will depend on how Kiernan moves around counters.
So what do you think about mismatch art of the same card?
What are we talking about here?
Well, he's got the Expedition Horizon Canopy, and then the, I believe that's the 25th? Masters 25?
yeah, I mean, I like for things to be consistent also because your opponents can get a little bit of advantage when you're playing with, decks that get to see your hand, except those are like $90 cards, so don't fault
Yeah.
anyone for
Oh yeah,
for
I
having
don't
different
blame
arts.
him.
Especially, your new parent, you're probably like penny pinching.
Oh, and sorry about that. That was Iconic Masters Horizon Canopy, guys.
Amateur hour.
I mean, I myself have 2 different copies of Horizon Canopies myself, so I don't have much to speak.
Looks like a cavern was picked off of cracking the canopy, and we get that played. And it names humans again.
I'm gonna go to attacks. Okay.
Ooh.
Interesting.
I'm really surprised by that with the Meddling Mage. Where I'm wondering if he's forcing the issue.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you kind of let Kiernan think that they could get something with double blocking and then moving counters, and they can follow up with a Reflector Mage, which seems... I'd trade a Meddling Mage for that move.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first, before blocks, I'll animate the Ink Moth. And I'll block this Meddling.
Kiernan thinking about blocks,
Oh,
and
he's only
just,
doing a single block.
just as a chump.
Worker dies.
Yep, modular onto the Ink Moth.
So I do that at 9.
Yeah, 15 minus 6 is 9.
Okay, Kiernan moves to 9. And there goes the worker.
Up here.
Like MTGO arrangement there, when your land's a creature, it stays in front of your lands.
Yeah.
Post combat. Play Reflector Mage. Bounce the Overseer.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, okay.
Manfred decides to bounce the Overseer there.
Slows the growth of Ink Moth overall, because even if you bounce Ink Moth, you still can play it. Because it is a land.
None of the lines necessarily seem
Yeah.
like worse than the other. I would have been tempted to bounce the Ink Moth.
Yep.
But Overseer is an issue, and Humans doesn't have a lot of removal.
We have a Nexus on 3. Correct. Nexus on 1.
I think if Manfred gets a Lieutenant here, it's probably going to be game over. Kiernan's going to have to force a lot of blocks with his Ink Moths. And he's going to be left with nothing.
And Manfred doesn't really need to attack in with Meddling Mages anymore.
Yeah, like you said, he could keep attacking with a single Militia Beagler with the 3 Noble Hierarchy Exalted triggers.
You want to go to attacks? Swing with
Yeah, but we're coming in with the team.
4, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
4 blocks. Animate.
Animate.
I'm definitely blocking the Meddling Mage that's naming Arcbound Ravager here.
Block. Meddling Mage.
Oof.
Block.
I mean, if you're throwing away your 2/2 Ink Moth,
Well, it's a 3/3. It's
Oh,
got
3/3.
2
Yeah,
counters
sorry,
on
yeah,
it,
3/3.
so...
Meddling Mage.
Now there is an innocuous-looking Aether Vial hanging out there in the upper corner, so that activation on 2 could mean a lot. But at this point, Kiernan's down and has to do some blocking, so I'm definitely blocking the Meddling Mage that is on Ravager.
let's bring out
But-
some dice.
This mage will die.
Oh, no.
This mage will get a -1/-1 counter.
The dice are for -1/-1 counters.
Yep. Modular over here.
Yeah, Kieran's still not in a great place.
Yeah, I feel like in that turn you might want to realize that you're going to die to a Lieutenant, and then just block the 1 Meddling Mage on Ravager to leave yourself an out to winning the following turn.
Yep.
So right now we're at 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, we'd have 5, 6, 7, 8. It could go up to 8 counters if a Ravager is
Yeah.
played, which isn't gonna quite do it.
Yeah, if he had another Moxel Bowl, maybe 2 more 0 mana costing, but I'm wondering what's stuck in his hand besides the Steel Overseer.
Probably some green cards.
Yeah.
Ravager.
Oh, okay, he does have the Ravager.
Oh well, if you had saved one of those Ink Moths, I think that could have been lethal. Have to go back and do the math a little bit, but I don't quite think this is lethal right now.
Pass 2.
Fortunately for Manfred, he still won't be able to get in for lethal here. So I think he just top decked another Meddling Mage.
Are you gonna uptick the vial or leave it on?
I'm
2?
leaving it on 2. Sorry.
Kitesail,
Usually I
Freebooter, and
prefer
Ancient
that.
Ziggurat
I'm gonna leave
is
it
what's
on
left in Manfred's hand.
Try to be.
Okay,
So-
Freebooter
Trigger, and
isn't the
that's
worst. You're gonna definitely be able to survive an Ink Moth attack.
Cancel freebooter.
And see what the leftovers are that we've been holding on to.
Reveal your hand. I choose a non-creature, non-land card from it.
Oof, that's a rough hand for
There's
Kieran.
a lot of green things.
Right? I'm gonna leave these revealed, by the way.
Yeah. I'm gonna take. Oh lord.
Probably Hardened
I'm gonna
Scales
take
is the take here.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We have 2 stars. Do you mind if I?
And then I probably played a melee mage named Agent Stirring at this
5.
point.
It seems like a pretty free thing to do.
I think you just come in with a single Militia Bugler. Because at this point, Kiernan has to chump block.
Well, if you come in with everything, not counting the Noble Hierarchs, you're going to take Kiernan to 1.
Yeah. Well, he's going to be able to block 2 things.
Right.
Yeah.
So Kiernan's at 5 right now, and we have, I guess we have a 1/1, 2/2, 2/2.
We have 3/2 power, yeah.
2/3,
So.
yeah. So Kiernan would be at 2, I guess, at that point.
Swing for the fences.
And Manfred's swinging with everything.
I don't know what to do with these stupid power-ups.
4 blocks, animate.
Yep.
This will block a reflector, or
Oh, these guys are.
yeah, vigilance. Yeah, this will block a reflector mage.
Interesting math in this game.
Yeah, he's willing to go down to 1 instead of 2.
1 card in hand. 2.
Yeah, once you get Ravengers on the battlefield, Hardened Scales deck, or any Affinity deck really, gets pretty interesting with how you decide to attack and block. Looks like Kiernan's still thinking about it.
I'll
Oh.
block here, and I'll sacrifice this.
Alright, blocks the 1/1 Meddling Mage. It has a -1/-1 counter on it,
Yep.
and sacrifices Citadel,
So I'll take 4.
and
1.
drops to 1. So
Mage dies. Reflector Mage dies.
So Kiernan needs a land placed to Overseer
Helping you out.
I'll pass
so he has enough blockers. But I actually, you know, Manfred's got the meddling mage. He actually should be able to swing for lethal next turn. I think regardless of what Kiernan draws here.
right, what was that land that was
I
put in there?
think it's another Inkmoth Nexus, but it's
Okay.
a foil. That's under the light.
I'm blinded.
Looks like a soul ring almost.
It's probably the correct thing to do is pass here, right?
Yeah, you have the 3 blockers, or I mean, you only need 1 flyer blocker here.
Oh.
Or is he going for the? He's got 1, 2. He can't go for the win here because Manfred's just going to block the fight. So
Yeah, there is no win here for Kiernan with the it's all known information.
yeah,
you.
if Manfred finds if he activates the Aether Vial with the Melee Mage, that should be lethal because he's got 4 attackers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Or maybe he didn't have a Meddling Mage
Yeah.
in hand. I could.
We
I
will,
could be
we will
wrong.
find out.
Yeah.
Manfred currently has no infect damage.
Yeah. Kiernan has not been on the offensive at all this match.
I don't think there has been an attack. Those 2 points of life Manfred lost were just due to Horizon Canopies generating mana. So both players thinking really hard. It is like you're on a you're on a knife's edge here.
Yeah.
I potentially would have been curious on ticking up the vial to 3 in case I drew a Reflector Mage, so you could have that as a combat trick after Inkmoth was activated. But
Yeah. I swore that card in Manfred's hand was a Meddling Mage.
Yeah, I mean it's tricky in this situation where
Yeah.
you see that Inkmoth is like going to be lethal with the Ravager. Might not, might not see exactly the right line to victory here, but perhaps it's not a middling mage.
Swing with the bugler.
And we're just swinging with a phantasmal image. Bugler is pumped with the noble hierarchs.
I think you would jump with the Sparing Moth, then sack it for the Ravager.
Okay.
Block. And I'll sacrifice it to the Raptor.
Okay. Go ahead.
Vulnerable position there, not being able to animate your Inkmoth that has counters on it
Yeah.
to put more
Oh,
counters.
Another Ink Moth.
Is that the 5th Inkmoth we've seen?
Yeah.
I was joking. I think we're at number
I was
4.
like, wait. I think Kiernan's gonna force. Oh. But he. Is Kiernan assuming Manfred forgets that he's a blocker?
Maybe Kiernan doesn't realize that it can fly.
Because he leaves himself for lethal on the swing back.
Yep.
Well, no, because I think he's assuming he has to block, but if he doesn't, Manfred should have the win.
Block
But-
with freebooter.
So if Manfred has any 2-drop right now.
Yeah, off
Right.
the yep.
He did clear the way to win the next turn if you're counting Manfred having nothing.
Oh,
Thalia.
Yep, we get Thalia though. It's going to do it.
yep.
Draw for my turn.
Assuming Manfred remembers to attack with every creature. That
Manfred's
was also Manus, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Mantis Rider.
Yeah, that should
Oh,
be
so that's
it.
going to clean it up pretty quickly there.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Number of.
I'm
number
just
of-
seeing if I could have done something different last turn. I don't think so.
All right, that was an interesting game 1. Going to sideboards here, let's see. Humans, that is the one thing that it has going against it is that pretty much everything you have in your sideboard has to be a creature. There's a few exceptions. I think they might play a Damping Sphere every now and then.
Graphic Cage also.
Cage, but
yeah.
really low-costed artifacts. You can't
Yes.
rely on colored spells on the sideboard.
Four colors.
fair.
Yeah.
What's
I imagine Manfred's probably playing a couple of Night of Autumns.
Okay.
They'll probably come into play. Maybe is it Statuscaster?
Oh,
Stratocaster?
yeah, the Izzet Staticaster is.
Really good in this matchup.
Yep, usually there's a couple of those hanging out on the sideboard.
And that's really all I can imagine is coming in. You probably could take out a couple of the Kite Sail freebooters because they don't really hit too many good targets.
I kind of like having the
Do you?
freebooters in
Okay.
and maybe taking the buglers out, just because the buglers are really slow and don't do much, and the freebooters are at least going to block for that like kind of combo kill with the
Yeah.
Inkmoth.
Or just swing with Exalted.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think at least I assume Manfred's probably playing 3 Militia Buglers if he's going with this option. So I see him taking 1 to 2 of those out.
Yeah, unless so I think Kiernan only has the Inkmoth and then a Hangerback Walker that can be sacrificed or die to generate flying blockers. So I put a lot of weight on having flying attackers.
I also can see Thalia coming out. She doesn't really do too much, especially being on the draw. She's a little too slow. All of Kiernan's non-creature spells are already 1 mana, except for automation. So I also can see a couple of Thalias coming out, because she's going to get outclassed very quickly.
Okay. And it seems like Kiernan was really missing a card like Animation Module there, or, like a Hardened Scales in turn
Yeah.
1, missing the green mana is pretty big. As far as sideboard goes, right now Hardened Scales is playing some amount of spot removal and dismembers.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to see any dismembers coming in for this matchup.
Okay. Yeah, it's a toss-up. I would probably bring him in because you could die from just like a Mantis Rider or something, and you generally do a pretty good job of generating a lot of chump blockers on the ground, but the air can be an issue.
Yeah. Well, looks like a couple of Kite Sails are coming out.
Well, we do have 18 minutes left, so both of these decks can be pretty explosive
Yep.
and win in, under 6 turns.
Yeah. Well, they both kind of had really weird slow hands. You know, Kieran obviously having 3 dead cards with no green mana source. Manfred had to go with the Militia to find better threats.
They had sort of chained buglers into each other there on the early turns, and not exactly where you want to be against a hyper-aggressive deck like Hardened Scales, except it ended up both players at awkward sevens.
Yeah. Yep. I think
Do you mind if I ask the judge?
Manfred, he just had the 2 Horizon Canopies to find a couple more threats. Well, while we wait for them, I think they made a judge call.
It's probably a question about a maybe Oracle text for your opponent's deck or something.
Yeah.
One interesting thing to note from humans is they are, I think, playing Rest in Peace nowadays
Yeah.
as a 2-of, and I could see an argument for bringing that in. A lot of how Kiernan is able to generate a lot of counters is through modular,
Yes.
and if you can just shut down modular, I could see an argument for that card
It
coming
also
in.
turns off Hangerback Walker, I believe, because
It
when it
does.
dies,
Mhm.
yes. So,
Shuts down a lot of the combo parts of the deck. Doesn't shut off animation module, which
yeah.
that's a tough card to deal with.
Yeah.
But but if you have Rest in Peace and some Knight of Autumns, you're pretty well covered.
So, today was the latest ban and restriction list. Obviously, no changes across all formats.
6 turns in a row.
Do you think they're obviously playing it safe since the next Mythic Championship is Modern?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit. Anyone that
close.
was thinking there was going to be a banning in Modern or non-banning, I think to me that would be just crazy for Wizards on the precipice of releasing a set of 256 new cards.
Yes.
There's no reason to test a bunch of things at once. You're going to have this a bunch of new cards in the format, and then sure, there's some things that I could see an argument for a ban, but I doubt that'll happen until the next cycle.
No.
Yeah, because we have that, the Modern Horizons, then we have the London Mulligan rule, and then you're going to throw some banned and restricted cards on top of that. That seems a little bit ridiculous to
Yeah.
me. But
Modern's getting a nice change, pretty large change actually this year.
maybe the biggest it's ever had. 256 entirely new cards entering the format. All right, each player is looking at 7 and keeping, and we do have some green mana for Kiernan.
It's a little bit more like what I expect.
Do we have the Hardened Scale? Okay. Not yet, not yet.
That is one of the big differences, I think, between Hardened Scales and traditional Affinity with your cranial platings, etc. Is usually if you're on traditional Affinity, you're able to play a Mox Opal on turn 1 and then have enough artifacts so you can use it for mana. This Hardened Scales deck usually has to wait till at least turn 2, except for really kind of degenerate starts with some 0 drops like Welding Jars and your artifact land. So Mox Opal not quite as scary.
Though I
And
think we've talked about this in the past though. It lets Hardened Scales be a more resilient deck overall though, because Stony Silence and some artifact hit cards don't absolutely kill the deck.
Very true.
They can survive and rebuild fairly quickly, or they still can build large creatures and not have to worry about it because of Hardened Scales.
All right, what 2-drop are we going to get here? Usually that's where stuff starts to get good.
Or maybe Hardened. Okay.
It's a worker.
Huh. He was gonna tap out for 2. I wonder if he's afraid of dropping Arcbound Rabbit. Well, because again, Manfred could have that Knight of Autumn, right? Or a Steel Overseer. He would not want to lose a Steel Overseer this quickly in the game.
Could have also been contemplating bolting the bird, so to say, with a ballista there and tapping out for the ballista and pinging the Hierarch. But if you wait one more turn and are able to turn on the Mox Opal, you might be able to do that and still save your ballista.
Is this a Mantis Rider? He does have one hand. Is he going for the Reflector Mage instead?
Benzo the foremost.
Oh. Okay, there's your Graveyard Hate.
attacks.
Proactive graveyard hate there.
Yes.
Target tapped creature I control, and if a creature would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead.
Perhaps that was the judge call that Manfred was curious about.
Yeah.
And then we are hearing that we hear Manfred confirm that that's what he was checking with the judges about here. I love Danafenza. It's a very underrated card, I think.
When I haven't seen Abzon Little Kid in a long time.
Animation module.
This definitely helped that deck quite a bit.
Okay, we get an animation module, so that's a way to kind of get around that graveyard hate that Manfred
Ooh.
presented.
Counters for it.
You know, rereading Anafenza, she can never put a counter on Mantis Rider.
One life.
That
It's
is
on
correct.
tap creature, but she could tap onto a Noble Hierarch.
Module trigger. I'll pay the 1.
Sounds good.
Servo.
All right, we're creating some servos here.
Pass to you.
Right now you have 1/1, 1/1 hanger back, and 1/1. All right. Draw for my turn. Cavern on humans.
All right, Cavern naming humans for Manny there.
Hope we see the Mantis Rider. I think he's got to start racing in there now.
For Vile,
Okay.
I will swing for 7, trigger Anafenza to put a 1/1 counter on.
All right, that is working out. We're going to get a trigger off Anafenza to put a counter on the Hierarch.
I'll block Fenza with a servo.
Yep.
And I'll take 3 in the air.
16. Go ahead.
All right, Kiernan takes 3 in the air, dropping a 16.
You took 1 from.
Potentially that Noble Hierarch's going to be a 4/5.
You're right. My bad.
No worries.
Untap open draw.
You got it. It's all you.
I think unfortunately for Manfred, he has a second Anafenza in hand, so he's got 1 dead card in hand.
It's doing some work right now, though.
It is. I think what Kiernan's really missing is a hardened scale.
Consider it claimed.
Oh, wow.
Go to 24.
Nature's claimed the Aether Vial. I guess if you don't have anything else to use your green mana for, you might as well use it now.
Could kind of work as a combat trick where your opponent swings all in for lethal and you're able to Nature's Claim your own Mox or whatever is useless.
Need 1 card.
Hardened Scales seems like a deck that is very similar to Death and Taxes, where the matches play out very differently when you have your Aether Vial or when you have your Hardened Scales as those when you don't.
Mantis Rider.
Alright, we get an image copying Mantis Rider here.
I would love to see a blue-white hate bears with detention. Deputy of Detention now.
Yeah, I remember a couple years ago Craig Westcoat top 8'd a GP with Death and Taxes playing Serum Vision and a couple other blue cards. It looks like we get a Phantasmal image copying Mantis Rider and then Athalia's Lieutenant. So this is a lot of damage coming in here.
Yeah, Kieran's in a little bit of trouble here.
13.
A little?
1 on top creature.
Yeah, he's got 1 card in hand. I don't really see what he's going to draw to help him out here. Especially with that Anafenza and no removal spells for that Anafenza in hand. Yeah, this is going to prevent Modular going onto the Hangerback Walker. You can't even get tokens. It's pretty rough for Kieran.
That is a way that Hardened Scales is able to engage profitably with these other creature decks, is usually when your creature dies, you're getting some benefit out of it, almost kind of like an Aristocrats thing, but they're just face value right now.
I'll block there. Dies. Takes the modular trigger. I'll take 8.
Yep. Puts you to 8.
Alright, Kieran going to 8. And are we going to get this worker off the battlefield?
Yep.
There we go.
Technically exiled.
Or, yeah.
I don't think you have any weird recursion, but.
No.
And pass the turn.
At the end of your turn.
Looks like we're going to get this Hangerback Walker a little bit larger at the end of turn.
I will pay the 1 to the body.
Yep.
And
Alright, Manfred looks to have lethal damage in the air the next turn.
upkeep draw.
I would have cracked the Horizon Canopy there. That would have been at least 2 more cards.
Ancient Stones.
Right, we get a stirrings. Let's see if we have an answer.
Got a walking ballista, but the end offense is too big at this point. I think he might have Ink Moth in hand, but I mean, you got two 4/4 Mantis Riders in air as well.
Horizon Canopy.
It's not looking there's going to be a lot of options for outs here.
So I'm assuming he's going to crack Horizon Canopy. He's running out of mana and card draw.
Crack Horizon Canopy.
Yeah, he already played a land. He has no way to block the Mantis Riders. Unless he drew a removal spell, I think Kieran's dead on next turn.
Hardened Scales.
And usually the removal spell that Hardened Scales is playing is going to be Dismember, which is effectively like taking an attack with
Yeah.
one of these Mantis Riders.
And
Well, he could.
Could have not tapped the
Yeah.
Mox, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's not Dismember in Kieran's hand.
Yeah.
My turn. Play a Noble Hierarch.
Alright, get a Hierarch off the Cavern.
And let's go attacks. Swing with Anafenza. Got 8.
I'm at 8.
Just attack with the Noble, make it a 4/5 with the Anafenza.
Swing with everything I can.
And don't forget your trigger.
We're going to go ahead and put the counter onto Thalia's Lieutenant.
Did not forget that trigger.
3/4, 3/3, 4/4, 4/4, 5/5.
3 things on the ground.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm curious to see what's going to happen here. It looks like Kieran has some play.
I'm not
I wonder what it is.
Yeah. So I'm hoping tonight. I don't know if you know what Ryan's playing tonight. Ryan Sten.
I don't.
He's playing Panharmonicon Tron.
Ooh.
I saw him yesterday. 2 Panharmonicons, and he got to play Thought-Knot Seer.
Okay, are there any other sweet things going on with the...
He's playing the primordial green creature that destroys lands.
Okay.
So he's doing land destructions. He's doing a little bit of everything with Tron.
I mean, Tron is essentially a land destruction deck at heart.
It is, but so his sideboard is to go back to classic Tron.
Crank it.
Huh. Huh.
Right? You're just like, what is happening?
Ooh. What's going on here is what I'm curious
That's
about.
still 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Kieran's got. Does he have a Blessed
Fate
Alliance?
Life.
7.
Oh, Nature's Claim himself.
Claim. I go to 11. That's still legal.
Yeah, it's still legal.
Okay.
All right,
Next game.
we did it. There was a math. That's exactly 11.
To a bridge.
Unfortunately, Kieran had to tap a Horizon Canopy to do that.
I was wondering if you had
Surprised.
those. Like that's
Surprised
the
Kieran brought so many Nature's Claim into the matchup.
whole wide board.
We know,
Trying to maybe slip in with Noble Hierarchs.
you know,
Might,
I don't think there's. I've never seen a human's deck list place Goni Silence.
Recorded.
Oh, not at all.
They just usually run the Night of Autumn.
Correct.
So I'm wondering if Kieran misread the sideboard that was being brought in.
I left in the vials.
You know, it could also be in these matchups we have 2 pretty hyper-aggressive decks. Just a 4-point life swing can change the dynamics of the game, especially if you're using it on something like a Hangerback Walker where you're like maybe need to generate some Flopter tokens. I could see an argument for maybe bringing that in. I'm not sure I would do that, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't fault
I
someone
don't.
for that.
I think if I was Kieran and I was on the draw, I would keep them. But I think as the play, I don't think they're as good as on the play because you kind of just build that value up.
It just didn't seem